This is a 1997 Porsche Boxster. And this is Alanis King.
And you know, compared to the Porsche 911, the Boxster kind of gets treated like a second-class citizen. But it's still awesome, especially for the money.
That's right. Today, Alanis and I are going to review this first-year Boxster and show you all the quirks and features of one of today's best Porsche bargains. Before we get started, big news, this 1997 Porsche Boxster is currently for sale and it's being auctioned live on Cars and Bids. This first-year Boxster has a manual transmission and a classic Porsche color silver over red, and it's offered with no reserve on Cars and Bids. So, once you finish watching this video, click the link in the description below to visit the live auction for this Boxster where you can bid on it and buy it only on Cars and Bids. All right, time for the quirks and features of the original Boxster. We're going to start with a little overview and some history of this car because it's actually pretty interesting. So, in the late 1980s, early 1990s, Porsche was in basically financial ruin. It was kind of close to bankruptcy. People don't really understand how bad things were for Porsche at the time, so they consulted with Toyota for some production process improvements to streamline their manufacturing, but that wasn't all they needed. Their cars were ancient. The 968 at the time was based on 70s architecture. The 928 also had its roots in the 70s. They needed something new. So, in 1993, they debuted the Boxster concept car. And it was kind of Porsche's moonshot. It had to work, or else. For the 1997 model year, the production version came out. And so this is a first-year original Porsche Boxster, the car that started this line.
And if you look at this nameplate, we have two pieces right here. We have box and then we have stir. The box comes from the Boxster engine and the stir comes from the back half of Roadster because it's a Roadster. If you walk around the front, you'll notice that this looks a lot like a 996 911. That's because they share a lot of features. The headlights, the bumper, the engine architecture, and that streamlining and that cost saving actually kind of helped save Porsche. A lot of people credit it with that.
Now, like I mentioned, the Boxster debuted for the 1997 model year, and this is a first-year original Boxster. These early cars had a 2.5-liter flat six with only 200 horsepower, but power steadily increased throughout this car's life. In 2000, they came out with the Boxster S, had 250 horsepower and a larger engine, 2.7 liters, and power for the base car boosted to like 215. By the end of production, the Boxster S was making 260 horsepower and the base model was at 230, but this is where it started.
And this is obviously our base level Porsche, and it was actually a return to form. So we have the engine behind the driver. For a long time, the base model Porsche, the 356, had the engine behind the driver. That went until the mid-60s, and then from the 70s to the 90s, we had the 924, the 944, and the 968. All front engine. So we go back to this base model with the engine in the back and you look really fancy.
That's right. The entry-level mid or rear engine Porsche returns. All right, moving inside for the quirks and features of the original Boxster.
And I think the first thing you notice when you get in here is just how simple this dashboard in this car is. And you'll also notice if you get to looking kind of closely that we have blank buttons, don't we, Doug? And why would we have blank buttons in this car?
There are a lot of blanks in here, and that's because this interior was shared with the 996. Just like you mentioned before, the front bumper, the headlights, a lot of the front panels, exterior, were shared with the 996, and so was the interior. Again, it was a cost-cutting thing. The hope was they could develop two products for the price of one and a half, maybe, and like get it done. And that's exactly what they did. So these blanks are for stuff that would have existed on the 996, but not here. This lower one, for instance, is a rear wiper. The Boxster, of course, never had.
We do not have one of those.
Yeah, but some of the 996s did, so you have the blank, and then there's a spoiler, but one of these would have been the spoiler as well. There was a lot of like parts sharing and cost sharing in order to keep costs down to try to debut two products and make people think they were different.
And that also not only led to blank buttons, but some confusing stuff in the interior, like the seats.
Yeah, the seats are also from the 996, and bizarrely they have little storage pockets behind them. Because you would want that if you had back seats, but
even
in this
though
car
you can't reach them,
like there, you can't really access them.
When you fold them down, you see the storage pockets, and I guess if you wanted to put some paperwork in there and access it later, you could. We also have little hangers on the backs of the seats
for clothes you could never put there because it goes right up to the edge of the interior. But for the 996 with its back seats, you did. And even the fact that they fold is kind of a little odd since there's no storage back there, but the 996 had back seats, so they folded forward so people could get inside.
And there's some more weird stuff in here. So we have this stack of CD holders, not CD players. This is 97, and we've got all of our favorite CDs in the car, and you just click it and you pop it out and you have your CD in there and you put it in the actual CD player because it's not quite in there yet.
That is exactly right. You know, in that car, my Carrera GT, I play CDs because it doesn't have a Bluetooth or anything like that.
As you should.
And I wish I had that. I actually legitimately, I'm sitting here like, boy, that would be kind of nice.
It would be kind of nice, Doug.
But this was a big Porsche thing at the time. A lot of Porsches had this stupid CD holder, which is now by modern standards, we're like, what a joke. But that was a thing.
But another big Porsche thing, not only at the time, but now, is that we start the car with our left hand on the left side of the wheel. And this happens in the Boxster. This happens in every other car because back in the day at Le Mans, you ran to your car at the beginning of the race and you got in it. And the thinking was, if the ignition is on the left, we will save like a quarter second diving into the car, shifting into gear with our right hand, starting it with our left, and going getting on track. So you get in the Boxster, it's on the left. You get in Uncle Jim's Macan that he's paying $800 a month for, and it's on the left.
Right, a base Macan. From the days of the Le Mans start has a key on the left, but that's exactly right. That is the reason.
In case he needs to get in and, save some time.
Yeah, in case Uncle Jim needs to do a running start.
Get a running start, and you just slam into the car.
But that's it. That's why it's there, if anybody has ever been curious.
Yeah.
Other interesting things. Porsches from this area did not have a glove box. The 911 didn't. The Boxster didn't. So instead, they have a locking center console area where you can stick stuff, and you can lock it with a key so you can have things in there and people won't get into it. I assume they didn't have a glove box because airbags at the time were like hard to integrate with a glove box, and manufacturers have figured that out now. But back in the day, it was like, we have an airbag, we don't have room for a glove box, and so you had the center storage area instead.
Oh, how technology progresses. Technology has also progressed too. When you put cars in sport modes, a lot of the time, your driver instrument cluster goes from normal font to italicized font. But this is 1997, so we don't have a digital instrument cluster. We don't have any of that. We just have italics for everything with our speed and everything.
Italics made you faster.
Because when you're in italics, you're going faster.
That's right. That was the thinking. I think it's ridiculous. You will also notice, by the way, in this instrument cluster, the tachometer is right in the center, which is like a Porsche thing. When you're on the racetrack, you don't care what speed, you're going to care what your engine speed is. That's the important thing.
You care about when you're approaching red line.
Red line. But they do have a digital speed display in the corner, so you can see that and also have your tach in the center, which is kind of nice.
Isn't that so nice? Now, two buttons on the Boxster that are not blank are my two favorite buttons in any car, which are the seat heaters. Because you get in a car and it's cold outside and you want to just warm up. This is luxury. We have this Boxster you can flip on your seat heater and you are good to go.
You live in Texas.
Well, yeah, but I run my seat heaters from like August to April. I love seat heaters. They make me happy.
And we have them in this car, which is unusual and kind of surprising because this was the entry-level base model Boxster, but it has that nice luxury touch.
Still fancy.
It was fancy. In fact, it was expensive. The base price of this car was around 40 grand in 97. Which apparently translates to like $75,000 in today's money. A new Boxster is like 72 grand, and it has a lot more power.
Yeah.
Apple CarPlay.
Apple CarPlay, not our stack
like
of
this,
CDs.
It's amazing to look back. Yeah, right. Instead of Apple CarPlay, you got CD slots
that don't actually play the
that
CDs.
don't play the music. No, you just get to have them there, so you can later insert the music yourself.
Yeah. So,
but it is crazy to think that this car was like pretty big money at the time, considering by modern standards it's pretty basic.
And we always talk about how everything has gotten so much more expensive even compared to inflation, and that's so right, but the Boxster has not.
The Boxster apparently has it. It's gotten better and apparently a little cheaper than it used to be.
Incredible.
Also,
wow.
One other unusual thing in this car, the door storage, it lifts up and then you can put stuff in there, but when you put it down, there's still an opening for some reason.
So it doesn't fully close.
It doesn't really close, so you can still see your stuff.
Yeah, you can still make sure it's there, like it didn't disappear, no one did any magic tricks on it. You know, it's still there, but it doesn't fully
close. You can't access it. You can look at it and be like, oh yeah, there it is, but then you have to lift up
and
the
if
thing.
you spill your drink, it's definitely going in there, so
Right.
be careful. You'll also notice that in here you can manually adjust the climate controls, but I guess Porsche decided that the German word for manually, which is Manuel with 2 L's, was close enough to manually that they did not have to translate
Right,
it
if the
for
German word had
America.
been more different, they would have had to translate it. But they were like, they'll figure it out.
They'll figure it out. So you get in the Boxster and you look at your manual climate controls and it says Manuel.
And you just kind of like, yeah, that works.
Okay, sure. And then you change it.
This car is also cool because of the color combo. You know, the classic Porsche racing color is like silver with a red interior. Silver over red, as we say.
Silver over red. Doug likes to correct me on this.
And this car is that, silver over red, which is cool. Like the original, one thing I love about this car, it's like the first year original old school Boxster in like the Porsche color combo, and it is very red in here.
And I think the cool thing about red is that you like red cars. They're nice, but if you have a red exterior, it's gonna fade in the sun, it's gonna be hard to match the paint. If you wreck it, you have a red interior,
You're legit.
you're good.
Red carpeting too, you'll notice.
Red
by the way.
carpeting,
They really
too.
went red with
And
this
it's
thing.
very cool when you like go back and forth on the carpeting. It goes from darker red to lighter red. It's
Right.
kind of like
You get to feel
like
both
one of
reds
those
at once.
like one of those pillows with the sequins on it that you can flip the images. It's really
Right.
nice.
The last interesting thing is the roof.
The last interesting thing is
You want to do it? There's a button.
Where's
it's
the
a power
button,
top.
Doug?
There's a button in the center control stack. You push the one with the car with the roof on it.
Ooh. Well, he just asked me if I wanted to do it, and then he did it.
You're gonna do the manual part, the Manuel part.
Oh, I'm doing the Manuel part.
It's a power top, except for.
The latch.
Oh, I
right?
think we need to put these down. Got lucky. Okay, now. I don't know what you do, so good luck. It says press, but I don't know if that's when you. I don't know if that's when you. Oh, there you go. Boom.
I got it.
Top done. All good. And that's the convertible top and the Boxster, mostly power, but partially
Manuel. Next, we're moving outside, and I want to start with probably the most controversial part of this car and the 911 from this era, the headlights.
The headlights.
We have this runny egg shape. That's what everybody calls them. Instead of the round headlights that we're used to seeing on 911s and stuff, we end up having this little extra bit here that people get kind of mad about, and they've gotten kind of mad about for a couple of decades. But I have a take that I'm going to present to Doug, and I told him that I wasn't going to tell him until we were on camera. And my take is that we're getting to the point in the history of this car, it's old enough to where these actually aren't that bad anymore.
I never thought they were bad to begin with.
Okay, Doug, tell me how you feel about the runny egg headlights.
The people hated these especially because they have the orange in the bottom. Porsche wised up, and after a few years they were like, because they literally looked like runny eggs with the orange in the bottom. After a few years, Porsche was like, no, they made all that white. But people still hated how it looked.
Well, so here's the thing. We always hate change and we hate different things when it first happens because it's not cool, it's different, we don't like change, we want our routine. And then 20 to 30 years later, we go, you know, that didn't happen for very long, and that's kind of rare, and it's interesting.
You think they should do a retro and bring these back?
No. Do you, Doug?
No, it would be suicide, but I never thought they looked bad. Like, I got it. I was like, they were trying to transition away from just being married to circle lights.
Yeah.
They knew they were gonna have an SUV. They couldn't really get those to work on an SUV. It doesn't look right.
Yeah.
So they were like, what can we do? This was the result. And boy, did people get mad. And they're still getting mad.
But the interesting thing is, we talk about Porsche's finances and how things were going downhill, and the Boxster was part of bringing it back up. And it's so weird that such a controversial front end did so much.
I know, people hate this car. Well, tell that to the tens of thousands of people who bought it and saved the company.
So that was the front of the car, and now we're gonna move on to the rest.
One of the things that I think is really special about this car is that it was like you said earlier, like a return to form for Porsche, like a true roadster, like the old 550 Spider, the old 356 Speedster. Like, it was a mid-engine entry-level, like, cool, simple, basic car. 2 seats, flinging around, and that's really clear on the outside. You look at this design, it was simple, it was basic, you had a windshield sticking up, and that was kind of that. There wasn't a lot to it. It was just a simple car.
And there's not a lot to it also when we look down here at our single center exhaust.
Single center exhaust.
it's kind of cute. It really brings it all together back here.
When the Boxster S came out in 2000, the distinction was that it had two. Yeah, so
but they were still in the middle.
Yeah,
but it had two.
That's right.
We moved to the side of that exhaust, and we have these weird little black pieces sticking out, and this was because of a weird safety test.
It was regulatory. There was some bumper test that it had to pass in that exact spot.
If you hit like a light pole from a certain angle.
It was something like that.
Something like that.
And so they stuck those on there, and they've been looking stupid since.
So we have these little lumps back here. You move up, and we have this really cool third brake light. So the third brake light, kind of an afterthought for a while because this was a safety regulation. You have your two brake lights down here, and then you have a third one so that people can recognize that you're braking. This is a really cool integration of that. It's not just stuck in the back window. It's right here in the car, and it looks really nice.
Yeah, and Porsche had some bad third brake light integrations. The most famous was the 993s had a literal, they call it a basket handle, that they had it sticking out of the car and went across the entire rear end just to mount the third brake light. But this is a lot cleaner. The whole car design is like a very clean sheet, simple design.
Very clean, very geometric, just symmetrical. We got a lot going on here.
It was nice. And another cool thing about this car is it has a surprisingly large amount of storage.
Yeah, because the engine is in the middle, we have a front trunk and we have a rear. In the front, it's actually really deep. We have a spare tire in there. You can fit a bunch of bags, enough for a long weekend trip. And then if you fill that up and you still need a little more space, you can move to the back, and it's not as deep, but it's pretty wide. You've got some space to fill.
It's there. So there's two trunks in this car. But one interesting thing, you can open these two storage compartments, but there's no compartment to open to access the engine. You can't get into the engine in your Porsche. It seems like sacrilege. You can access the fluids in the trunk, but there's no engine cover compartment in the Boxster, believe it or not.
You know, I think car enthusiasts, that feels sacrilege to someone like me or you, but you know, a person who just wants to buy a Boxster and drive around in their two-seat Roadster, they probably don't need access to the engine. They would rather have place for their bags.
That's probably true. Actually, people would rather probably have the two storage compartments than like be able to see the engine and show off their flat six.
That's exactly it. I mean, it's nice to have the storage. Now, another thing you notice on the back of this car is it has this tiny little lip back here. And you might think, that's not doing much aerodynamically, it's not very big. Well, it's active aero, which means at a certain speed, the spoiler actually pops up. Now, in this particular car, it's not working right now, but
that's kind of a reality. This car is not in perfect shape, let's put it that way. A lot of these older Boxsters aren't. People bought them to drive and they drove them. But to me, that's like kind of the cool thing about this car. It's a mid-engine Porsche you can buy for not that much money and drive guilt-free. Just like really hammer on it and enjoy without worrying about the miles.
I mean, think about the car market right now. You look at first-generation Miatas or other Roadsters and the prices are going up. You can get a relatively affordable Boxster here. You have a mid-engine Porsche, you look really fancy, and you didn't spend that much money on it. Doesn't really matter if the active aero doesn't work right now.
All right, time for the Porsche Boxster, driving the original Boxster, and I have to say, I truly, truly love this car.
And I have to say that I forgot to put my hair in a ponytail.
Good luck.
Because we have the top down. This is a fun car.
That's the fun of this car. It is top down cruising.
Yes, it is.
The thing I love about this car, it's not all that fast, I get it. It's not a 911, you know, I get it. It's not rare, there's a million of these. But the thing I love about it is cheap and it is cool.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, when you look at cars from 20 to 30 years ago, it doesn't really matter what car it is. It doesn't feel fast compared to today's cars.
And even supercars, that's exactly right.
Exactly, but you have to think about the value of speed in a car you're driving on the street. Is it that important? No.
Right.
Would you rather drive a fast car slow or a slow car fast, you know? Or a medium car fast?
Especially because, like, this isn't that slow. The thing I think is
not
cool,
at all.
like it's still, even after 78,000 miles, and this Boxster isn't perfect, like it still feels tight and fun, and you can just wring it out in a way that you just cannot do with you can just get it all the way up to the top of the rev range. It's quick enough, and it feels good up there. This car is smooth. There's not like vibration or shaking or anything. I was thinking it might not, it's like nice. There's nothing coming through the gear lever, like except that it shifts well.
And you know, when you get to this age of vehicle, there are rattles and there are sounds and things like that. we're kind of just hanging out.
Right, this car is built well.
Sounds nice. It feels nice. It's a car that's built well, which means even 20, 30 years later, it still drives well.
Even though there were a lot of criticisms about this generation 986 and 996 interior quality, because they did go to like crappier plastics and all that, but it holds up. I don't know, like everything works in here. It's nice, and it doesn't rattle or squeak like you're saying. It's like fine.
And I think the fewer options you have in terms of interior buttons and all of these things, the fewer chances you have for it to break, and that's a really valuable thing.
Right. Man, I love the shifter feel and the gear feel of this car. Porsche knows how to make a shifter, a clutch pedal, and a shifter better than anybody. And this car is such proof of that. And for what these sell for, like 8 to 12 grand for an early base Boxster, that's the thing about this car. It is not the fastest. It's not the one that's going to turn heads. Everybody's going to look at you and say, okay, you bought the cheap one. You're going to have all that. But you have a mid-engine Porsche for like totally reasonable money.
Totally reasonable money, and it's fantastic. And you know what? Who cares? You just have fun with it.
You have fun, and this car lets you have fun. Put the roof down, fling it around corners. You can go as fast as you want. It always grips. It's not fast enough to get you in trouble anyway. No. So it's not like you're going to have some sort of issue. For the money, this is just the best damn. I really believe it's one of the best cars. And you know what? I've actually always been a Boxster fan. I remember when I worked at Porsche, I had 911s as company cars. And one time I took my 911.
Like, no, I don't want that.
Right, I was 22, and so I was like, oh, Boxsters are for idiots. And so one time I took my 911 in for service, and they gave me a base Boxster, literally
and
no
you were
options.
So mad.
And I was like, okay, I got to drive around in this thing. And then I did, and I was like, that began my love affair with like mid-engine Porsches. Like, this just is right. I know it's not a 911. I know a 996 is faster, but this car is perfectly balanced. The shifter, the clutch, especially for 10 grand or whatever they sell for. It's so good.
I think that's really cool because you put all of your notions aside and all of your I'm better than that aside, and you realize this is a cool car and I like it. And it's special.
But you do have to do that. That's the problem. Like,
yes,
all that is true. And honestly, the person in the Boxster is probably having more fun than the person in the 911. But you're in a Boxster, and mentally you got to be okay with the fact that you're not in a 911.
Well, we talked about this when we were first looking at this car and standing around it, and we said you look at a Boxster as kind of second class to a 911. But you're right. A person who has a Boxster is going to be having more fun.
They're cheaper.
Because they don't take themselves as seriously.
Right, that's right. They're cheaper. You don't have to worry about the miles. You don't have to polish. You don't have to worry about the stitching and the going to the Porsche events. You just drive the damn car, and it's fun.
You tie your hair up and you drive the car.
And so that's the original Porsche Boxster.
It may not be a 911, but it's still fun to drive, and it's a bargain, especially compared to a 911.
And you can buy this one on Cars and Bids. And now it's time to give this Boxster a DougScore. And the DougScore is here, 49 out of 100, which places the Boxster here against some similar cars. The simple truth about these old Boxster models is this: they're not especially beautiful, they're not especially fast, they certainly don't carry any clout in the Porsche community, and they can be expensive to own, although most are fairly reliable. But overall, they're just damn great cars for the money. A mid-engine Porsche that handles fantastically and puts a smile on your face when you're driving it every single time for not that much money. All the drawbacks aside, all the comments about how it's not a real Porsche from your friends, it's all worth it when you push the car hard and appreciate its shockingly affordable price tag.